Hi guys, hope you're all doing well and enjoying your summer. By now, I'm guessing that the majority of you have seen my review of Saving Private Ryan, where I said I would be taking the summer off. I'm so happy that the majority of you understand why, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to be traveling to America on the 21st of July, and I'm very excited. And one of the reasons why is because I got contacted by History, who, if you can remember, I collaborated with on their Vikings podcasts. They've kindly invited me to come to the San Diego Comic-Con for the Vikings panel to interview the cast and the crew and basically just continue these podcasts promoting season 4 of Vikings. So needless to say, I'm very excited because I've never been to Comic-Con before. I think it's on every geek's bucket list or something like that. And also, I just can't believe my luck that History have invited me again to work on more of these Vikings podcasts. So whilst I'm over there, I'm going to see about updating you guys on Twitter and Facebook, and hopefully we'll also be able to post up some vlogs on this channel. These future podcasts will be video-based, and you'll actually be able to see me interacting with the Vikings cast and crew, and with other fans of the show. I think it's going to be pretty awesome. So in the meantime, just to whet your appetites, I thought it would be cool if I would post some of the old interviews I did before I leave for Comic-Con. If you wish to hear all the podcasts in their entirety, then they're available on SoundCloud, and I've provided the link in the description box below. I really hope you enjoy these interviews, and also, if you have any questions you would like me to ask the actors, please feel free to leave some in the comments below. So in this video is an interview I did with Michael Hirst, the creator of Vikings, and we had a pretty interesting conversation about the show and his opinion on history. Hope you enjoy it. Throughout your career, a big chunk of your work has been focused on historical fiction. What is it about Viking history that you personally found so appealing?
I prefer to work from historical material because in some ways my background's very academic. I was at universities for 10 years. So one of the things I love is to do the research, and out of the research and the reading come characters, their voices, and generally speaking, I find that you can't make that stuff up, that history itself is astonishing. And Vikings, in some way, well, it goes back to when my father, who every Friday used to come back with a little soldier we used to play with marbles and soldiers and things. And one Friday he came back with a little Viking, of course, with a horned helmet and everything else. And it's amazing how iconic that Viking figure is. All you have to say to someone is Vikings, and they immediately have this idea of the warrior and the thug, I guess. But when I decided that Ragnar Lothbrok was going to be my main character, one of the things that drew me to him was the fact that the historical Ragnar claimed to be descended from the god Odin. And the god Odin was not only the god of slain warriors in Valhalla, but he was also the god of poetry and curiosity. So I thought, of course, Ragnar, being his descendant, would have the same motivation, that he wasn't going to go out raping and pillaging. He was curious. He was curious about the world. He wanted to go out and see other places and other cultures. So that gave me a way into that character and a way of making him understandable and giving him a good motivation. And then the other way in was simply to say, these were family people. Husbands loved wives and wives loved husbands, and they loved their children, and who knew?
Yeah.
So it's been a fantastic journey for me, and with now some absolutely amazing characters who are some of my best friends.
Yeah. Well, also just the fact that the TV show talks about the sagas and, Ragnar sagas in particular.
Yeah, yes.
But I also saw like a little element of other sagas into the show as well. There was an episode with Ivar playing that game, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to be adapted from a Viking called Egil Skallagrimsson. Mm-hmm. Do you adapt from a lot of other sagas, a lot of other Viking history into the show?
Well, let me begin by saying that everything in the show begins with research.
Right.
Begins with real history, or what we know of real history. This is, after all, the Dark Ages. And I have a historical consultant as well, who gives me material. So everything starts with that, but I'm not a historian, and I'm not writing a documentary. I'm a dramatist and a writer. I'm a storyteller. And I often think this is my saga of Ragnar Lothbrok and his sons. And in order to write stories, you have to find drama, which means with the material you have to carve out of that shape and form, which is my craft and job, which means to some extent taking different bits from different parts of history, finding the connections between things. And as long as it's plausible, it plausibly fits into the whole Viking world that we've created, and as long as that it's authentic, or as authentic as we can make it. Authenticity is very important to the show. All the departments do a lot of their own research. You know, the costume department, Joan Bergen went to Scandinavia, found out how they made clothes then, how they make clothes now, what materials, what dyes, But we still don't know what Vikings actually looked like. So we've invented a look based on her research in Scandinavia, based on the few images and descriptions we have, but also to get away from the cliche, so to give them interesting hair, So they don't all look like deranged 60s hippies anymore,
With horned helmets.
With horned helmets, yeah. So I'm interested in authenticity, but I'm also interested in truth. Does it come out of and reflect on the sagas? Which, by the way, the sagas were written after the Viking Age, the end of the Viking Age, were written down, by an Icelandic monk. So that's gone through his imagination as well. It's wonderful because it's ongoing, changing, evolving storytelling. And the sagas, they're wonderful material for me.
Yeah. Are you ever frustrated by our lack of knowledge of the time period, or does it actually give you more creative freedom to do what you want?
I would say it does give me freedom, which is a good thing. A lot of my inspiration actually comes from reading, researching, and the drier the book is, dry historical accounts and verbatim accounts of things, the more exciting it usually is. And I get a lot of information from footnotes, things that don't quite fit into the story that the historian wants to tell, which may be little personal details. So I'm forever beachcombing. I'm picking up little nuggets along the way that I can expand and work with, and that might give me just some insight into one of the characters. In a sense, historians write from the outside, but as a dramatist, I'm working from the inside. So a historian will describe what someone wore, will describe what they said. I'm working much more with what they felt. What did they feel in that situation when they said that? How did they say that? What was, so it's a different activity often, but using the same sort of sources.
Well, a lot of the actors I've spoken to so far say that you give them a lot of creative freedom. Like, what is that actually like working with the actors?
I've encouraged collaboration, both with directors, with indeed all the departments, and I love giving them enough freedom so that they can, one, enjoy what they're doing, and secondly, give me something back. I want to be astonished. I want to be amused or shocked. So if I'm dictating to everyone, which I believe some showrunners do, I think they miss out on the opportunity of being surprised and pleased and thrilled by what they get back.
Like Travis Fimmel licking the seer's hand.
Yes.
I'm not sure if that was a joke originally or if it really was like a great improvised scene.
That was the idea of our first director, Johan Renck. I wanted a Scandinavian director to begin with, because I thought that would get us close to authenticity as we could get. Also, I thought the way he spoke, because we were casting Australians, Irish, Canadians, Brits, and they all spoke of course, in different accents. So there was a big discussion about how do our Vikings sound, and I said they sound like Johan Renck, who spoke wonderful English, but with a pronounced, accent.
Are all the accents based on his?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. And I've encouraged actors to come and talk to me. And Travis, with his script very, very closely annotated, we would have to go through it line by line, word by word. and he would have very strong opinions about things. And both he and I got very nervous when the time for our meetings would occur, and neither of us knew why, because in the end it was always constructive. Things always improved. I would have to persuade him about a storyline or about a phrase, and that was good because I have to defend it, so it better be defensible. So it was a good process. And to give you an example of that, I think the last episode of season 2, during that whole episode, he'd learnt the Lord's Prayer from Athelstan.
Yeah.
Our Father, who art in heaven.
Our Father, who art in heaven.
Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Thy kingdom come, thy will be done.
Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us.
And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us.
And Travis came to our meeting and said, I have an idea. He said, I don't want to say anything in this episode except the Lord's Prayer.
In the entire episode?
In the entire episode. And he said, you can give my lines to Bjorn or whoever else, but I don't want to say anything, just the Lord's Prayer. And I said, oh, that's interesting, Travis. And so I looked through the script, and I thought, well, yeah, that can work. And I thought it was a very cool idea as well.
Yeah, usually actors fight for lines.
Yes, they do. That's right. I thought, that's so cool. But the one thing we can't do is to tell the Americans that we're doing that their lead character is not going to say anything.
Yeah.
And actually, no one's ever brought that up.
No one's noticed?
No one's noticed. And one of the reasons is that he's in those scenes, and because of the intensity of his look, you think he must have said something, or he's going to say something, or you know what he's feeling, because you could see it. Because a lot of his acting was silent anyway. He does a lot with looks, and he was forever stripping out lines and things right from the start. So we collaborated a lot, and with Linus, because he's very experienced, he's very good, and he likes to get really deep into the character and everything. So he's pushing me about why did I say that. And
do you tell him everything right off the cuff, or do you surprise him with each new script?
I try and surprise him. One of the things that I surprised him with last season was, because we both loved T.S. Eliot, and I'd used, in just the first draft of one of the scripts, I'd actually used some lines from the 4 quartets. And I showed him the pages and said, we won't have these actual lines in the show, but this is what I want to say. This is what Eliot says here, is what I'm trying to say. So he said, oh, that's fantastic. But every time I tried to rewrite those lines, it was just turned into a sort of pastiche, or they didn't have the power. And what the lines were about time past and time future, are all perhaps contained in time present. So in the end, he spoke them. So a Dark Ages king quotes, a 20th century poet, which, by the way, wasn't noticed by anyone until I mentioned it in an interview.
What might have been is an abstraction, remaining a perpetual possibility only in the world of speculation. What might have been and what has been point to one end, which is always present.
It is about time. And of course, he's not a Dark Ages king. He's an actor in a contemporary drama, recreating the past, but being in the present. I mean, it actually works. So it's,
It does. It's like one of my biggest pet peeves is when characters in historical media have modern morals and your characters absolutely don't. And I find that so refreshing. Are there any things that sort of bother you in that same sense?
Yes, there are certain contemporary novelists who will remain nameless, but they write what they call historically based fiction. But all the characters are just like contemporary women and men. I mean, their reaction to events and their responses to each other are totally contemporary. It's just risible. It's ridiculous, Yeah. And the people who are writing don't have the gift of empathy. They don't have that gift that writers have to have is being able to get into someone else's skin. One of the things I do to myself, in a way, is get my Vikings to do horrible things.
Yes.
And still hope that the audience still likes them, and is sympathetic, even though, we really see them doing terrible things because they're Vikings. There's no getting away from that. I'm not rewriting history. I'm not saying, actually, the Vikings were really nice guys. They've been terribly misunderstood. They never raped and pillaged.
Because that's revisionist history, and
Yes,
that would be wrong.
That would be totally wrong. We have to see them doing what they did. But we have to see it in a much wider context, which is what we're doing.
Yeah, but you handled it in a very respectful and mature way, and I think that's what audiences kind of respect from that.
I mean, just to go back a little bit and to explain something. Of course, I noted that people said, oh, the attack on Paris, that actually happened later. So what, I have to wait to season 9 before they can show that?
Well, he'd be 100 years old by that point.
But the point was that in this game, you never know whether the next season is going to be picked up or not. And they don't decide that until well into the screening of the season before. And they look at the audience figures. It's a ruthless game, So I knew, obviously, about the attack on Paris, and I wasn't going to miss out on that, So I brought that forward, obviously and deliberately, just so we had it, so we could do it. And boy, did we do it well, I think.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I messed around a bit, with this a little bit. Okay.
The fact that you've made it authentic to the time period is something that I truly appreciate. And it encourages people to sort of research on their own, to find a bit more about the time period.
And Justin, the historical advisor, said, when you think about it, it's amazing, because that site of Dark Ages Paris, with its Roman walls, and existed on the Ile de la Cité, where Notre Dame is, that was Paris.
Yeah.
That hasn't been seen for hundreds of years. And it's like we've resuscitated at least 4 dead languages. Old Frankish, which sounds quite Germanic, Anglo-Saxon. But I find it wonderful and astonishing that a popular television show has 4 dead languages in it.
I haven't seen it that often, to be honest.
No, I don't think so.
Well, there you go. And thank you so much for